Well, joining me is Martine Cohen, no relation, by the way. I always have to say that when I interview a Cohen, who grew up in Montreal, attended McGill University. She's been an attorney for over 25 years and lives in Cote-Saint-Luc. Most importantly, she's got a great new book out. It took me a significant amount of time to read it because I took a lot of time. I took her advice, in fact, and took time to read it very carefully. It's called No More Layers: Discover Your Inner Power and Reclaim True Freedom from the Inside and Out. Martine, first, congratulations. And let me ask you first, how long did it take you to write this book? This was an extensive book.
Yes, so from beginning to end, it took me 2 years of really hard work and like I was mentioning, the biggest sort of challenge for me writing, and I love writing, was really how to structure it in a way that would meet the reader where they're at and that would kind of flow from one to the next. Because I had to cut down a lot and just bring it down to sort of like, concrete level where you can enjoy reading it and get something out of it and go back to it when you need it to. And yes, you cannot read it in one sitting. I do not recommend that.
No, no, definitely not. And like I said, I've got the notes to prove it that it makes sense to take your time. And I took it with me when I went downtown to pick up food. I went to the Starbucks, put a half hour there, a half hour there. It was the ultimate assignment, I have to say, in a very positive way. So back in 2016, your world came crashing down after a car accident that left you with a severe concussion. And in the process, you gained a deep and unique understanding of the intricacies of the brain, its fears, and protective layers. So it really changed your life, that accident.
It completely changed my life. So, in a nutshell, because the story is long, but it's in the book, I was a very happy attorney, actually. I really love being an attorney, but I was very much an attorney, which means I embodied that. And as an attorney, your main tool or your main identity is really your brain. I love strategy, mental gymnastics, all that kind of stuff, creating with words. That's what law is about. And so I think I kind of had a sort of intertwined identity with my brain, like we all do. We all identify with our personality, with our thoughts, with our emotions. It's who we think we are, whether or not we realize it or not. And when I lost the use of my brain temporarily after that severe concussion, I didn't have a story around things anymore. I could feel something, but there was no judgment around it. So I could feel fear. I went inside and I saw that we all have fears, we all have limiting beliefs, we all have, mental constructs and identities from early on childhood that we believe this is who we are, this is how we have to live our life, or this is the right way, or without asking ourselves if this is what we agree with, if that's what we want, if we agree with the thoughts we have, with the feelings or emotions that we're experiencing. And so I started working through my own inner fears, and there was nothing stopping me because my brain wasn't there to say, nah, don't go there, don't rock the boat, don't, right? We all have that. I didn't have incessant, thoughts coming at me at 2 o'clock in the morning. I didn't have anything. I just had what was inside of me. And because my brain wasn't there to so-called protect me or keep me in the status quo, which was very known, I could go explore my inner landscape and all that unknown and do whatever I chose with it because there was nothing else that was sort of part of that equation. And usually it's our brain that comes and says, no, you must do this, or you must be like that, or expectations that we have of ourselves or of life or of others. And if they're not met, then we have a whole story that's created. We don't create it. It's given to us on a silver platter, right? And it's like, oh my goodness, the world doesn't love me, or I'm not good enough, or I'm too much, or I'm too this, or I need to do this. Oh my good. We judge ourselves all day long. It's our thoughts. But if you don't have any of those and you have some peace and quiet, I don't suggest getting a concussion to go through this journey, but the truth is that it opened up my understanding that we're so much more than our brain and there's so much more to us. Our brain's a great tool, but it should never be in charge because it's going to sort of do what it does now, which is and create anxiety. People are overwhelmed. We're overloaded. We have an influx of thoughts that we can't even stop the sort of pace of. And so that showed me that. And I understood at some point that it wasn't just for me. So the book is written as a journey, which is why I say don't read it in one sitting, because it's something where you want to like sit with it and reflect and just sort of let it simmer and see where it lands for you. And then you move on from there. And my hope or intent with this book is that each person goes through their own personal journey of discovering their layers and getting rid of them if that's what they choose to do, so that they can then really take action and have the thoughts that they agree with, choose their actions rather than do it from a place of fear, FOMO, or avoidance, And then that's why it's freedom from the inside out, because when you're free on the inside, you can create an external sort of environment for yourself that reflects that internal sort of freedom and wholeness.
After you successfully healed from your concussion, you actually founded an organization or a company called No More Layers. And you're still a lawyer, but when I read the book, it was almost like you were like a therapist. You know, you seem more of a therapist than a lawyer with your No More Layers protocol.
Yeah, so it's funny. So I say that law is my passion and no more layers is my calling. And I'm not really ready to give up any of them, but I kind of like they work together. No, I bring no more layers to everything that I do in terms of just my approach. Because at the end of the day, I consult for growth companies. And at the end of the day, there's a human being behind every company. There's a vision, there's a hope, there's a dream. And it's all about the person, right? The company is sort of the vehicle through which the person creates something for themselves, but it's really about the person. And No More Layers is a way of life, but it's also a mindset. It's a mindset of being open to whatever comes before you with no judgment, moving the fear out of the way or working through whatever it is that would be sort of the determining factor in whatever decision somebody makes. And instead of that turning into a choice that really aligns with the wholeness of the person. And that's when we can get true success. It's about leadership of self before you lead others, let's say your team at work. So they seem very sort of far apart, but they're really not. They're kind of together. And for me, it's a huge asset. But I consult for CEOs in with No More Layers, and I can also do law. Like it's both. I'm asked to speak, I do some workshops. So I guess it's organically showing me where I can be of service, and I'm just following that.
Okay, it reminds me of myself in a sense with my job at the school board, being a city councillor and writing for the Suburban, and all my hats are interchangeable. They all help each other, so I can relate to what you said. You're also an inspirational speaker, so you do speaking engagements on a variety of subjects.
Yes. Yes, I talk about mindset. I talk about self-talk to success. The fear loop, which is like how to just move fear out of the way and how to turn it into curiosity. Because we're often gripped by fear. We have fears all the time. But if we show up to our fear with curiosity, we can move it aside, understand where the fear comes from, and then choose to dissolve it, and then find out what's there instead of the fear, and then work from that place. And that's a very nice place from which to operate. And I'm asked to speak on all sorts of different subjects, whether it's in a corporate world or it's sort of like a sort of more individual kind of audience, and I love that.
Layers, it's on almost every it's multiple times on almost each page, and I've never seen the word used so much in my life, and I really understand it's a whole new meaning to layers. You write that it's simply an indication that your past self was trying to survive. They are protective mechanisms formed as a result of many external stimuli, from parents to culture to society, but the core reason behind all of them is the same. Your brain perceives a threat as a reality, and it forms a layer to try and keep you safe from the threat. So this is a term that I think after you read the book, you realize how present it is in your life.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't really like the word no, but the title came to me as right, no more layers, and it was
Right.
something to strive towards, right? It's like a state of being where you
Yeah.
really trying to dissolve those layers and you start with, at a superficial level and then you go deeper and deeper. So it's like, step by step. We don't realize how many things instruct our actions, our thoughts, our emotions that are really not necessarily us. And we also don't question. So part of No More Layers is a lot of questioning because it's sometimes right in front of us, but if we don't connect the dots and we don't know it's there, we really can't affect any change or do anything about it.
Uh, Tell us more about this accident. How did it occur? And did it give you any trauma? But when you had to try to move on with your life after you recovered, like or did this whole process of layers, no more layers, help you get through it?
So I was really, it was just a regular day or so I thought, right? And then I was just driving and there's a car that's speeding and hits the driver's side. So my side, apparently this person was on their phone at the time, whatever it is. In any case, I didn't see them coming. So I
Yeah.
only had an accident when I came to. So I lost consciousness. I don't know for how long. I
Yeah.
can't imagine how long, but I have no idea because the paramedics were already there.
Yeah.
Um, and that was, I have to say, the darkest time of my life because it was very scary for me to lose the use of my brain and be aware of it. And that was the first indication to me that maybe I'm not my brain. Maybe there's something else. Because how did I have that awareness when my brain really wasn't functioning? I wouldn't be able to have this conversation with you. I wouldn't understand anything that you're saying by the end of your sentence. I'd probably understand each word separately to a certain extent, but not more than that. But yet I was aware of that. So it was, and I would search for my words and I wouldn't find them sometimes. It felt like a file that just didn't exist anymore, like a synapse that had been erased because some synapses were damaged. So
Yeah.
the awareness, though, of being in that state was both excruciating and I think life-saving, because that's what allowed me to start going inward and facing fears and even feeling fears, but I couldn't judge them or stop it. So I would feel the intensity of a fear, but there was nothing stopping me or telling me a story about it because my brain wasn't functional. So it took me a while for my brain to get better, and then I would get regular MRIs to make sure that it's not getting worse, to make sure that it doesn't come back. There's like little residual damage, but it hasn't affected my life in any way whatsoever. But this has opened up an entire new universe of sort of understanding of who we are, what we believe we are, what we actually are, how to get from that point to the other, and that journey. And I just stumbled upon it, but it belongs to all of us. And I think that's why I ended up writing the book, because I do believe that, you don't have to do anything with the book if you don't want to, but you have a right to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And you write about the injury in the book that you suffered severe brain fog, unrelenting headaches, trouble with your vision, and an inability to focus. But you didn't have, and you had no short term memory. So, you could have died, and you also could have really spent the rest of your life unable to have a regular job or even relationship with your family or anything of that sort.
Correct. It was very, like I say, it was really the darkest period because it was so scary not to know who you are anymore. I didn't feel like myself for a long time, and having the awareness of not feeling like yourself is very scary. It's scarier than just not feeling like yourself. And I didn't know what to do, which is why I went inward, and I just didn't know what to do. And it's the first time in my life that I didn't know what to do. As an attorney, you're like very much a solution-oriented type of individual. There's
Mhm.
always everything and creative thinking, but I couldn't think. But I had awareness. So it's a
Yeah.
very strange line to walk. And it was very unknown. But because there was nothing stopping me from that unknown, I just kept walking it because there was nothing else to do. And it led me to this whole sort of realization and discovery.
So you also write in your book that working as an attorney, strategies consultant, a mentor, and guiding your clients through the process of identifying and removing their layers, you note that many of the people who you work with are at the top of their game in a wide array of fields. So they still need your guidance.
So externally, it's easier for us to succeed on the outside than it is on the inside, for many reasons, one of which is simply because we can see the outside. It's very clear to us. We can see where we go wrong, where we go right. The
Yeah.
inside is very indirect. We have no mirror to the inside of ourselves the way we do. Like I can get up in the morning and say, my hair is disheveled, or I need to fix my makeup, or in your case, maybe you want to shave, right? That's very simple. And you can see if you missed a spot because you have a mirror, but you don't have a mirror to the inside of you. So all you have this is indirect sort of relation back to you
Yeah.
where you feel off or you think something you don't like, but you don't have it at the source. And
Yeah.
when we're trying to help you with that internal mirror, because the more you know yourself, the more you can do right by you. And if you're actually stand strong in who you are and you get to know, what your triggers are and why, then you can do something about it and you could live freer from that. And that's kind of the goal.
You brought up the mirror, and it was one of my questions. One of the things I found really interesting about the book is that you have exercises that someone could take out a pen and pad and do as the reader. You're almost getting like a lesson. I felt like I was speaking to you when I was reading the book, and you're advising readers to, for instance, set aside a distraction-free space, and also explain the other one I found really fascinating. It was to do an exercise in front of mirrors.
Yeah, okay. So a number of things. The reason why I have exercises is because there are different types of processors and different types of learners, right? So some people are auditory, some people are more visual, and the more you re-emphasize the same thing in different ways with different senses, the more sort of it gets integrated. So exercise is a great way to concretize something, and also to, again, it's a mirror because it's on the outside of you. When you start writing something, some people journal, some people sort of looking in the mirror, when you look at yourself in the mirror or you look at another person and you look into their eyes, after a while it gets very uncomfortable. But if you can get over that hump, there starts to be an opening. And then you start seeing things that you never noticed before. So if you actually look at yourself in the mirror after a while, your thoughts are going to start racing, not about something else, about you, about what you think about yourself, about certain things. And if you listen to it as an observer, not like sort of like as a person who's either needs to defend it or needs to counter it or deny it, but just as an observer, it's going to be a real indication of the kind of relationship you have with yourself in that moment. And if we don't know where we're at, we can't do anything to either change it or ameliorate it or keep it as is, but the awareness of it is important. If you know, for example, that you appreciate yourself, that's going to go a long way when you have to do an effort and stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning to finish an article. You're going to get the inspiration because there's nothing inside you that's going to fight you, right? But
Well
if you
said.
but if you don't appreciate yourself and you keep on putting yourself last and you don't even realize it, you're not going to get that cooperation from the rest of you, so to speak. Like it just won't work. You
Yeah.
won't get in the flow or that zone. So when you start understanding that and you start sensing those things, you can really navigate your life in a whole new way that's a much more interesting and much more fulfilling flow.
You also make it clear in the book that it's not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease, and it's an important part of your overall health and wellness plan to consult with medical professionals. So I think you want people to know that, not to just walk away from your book and say, well, Martine said to do this, so I'm going to do it.
100%. It's not Martine said anything. It's this is what I discovered. This is my journey. I'm, by the way, a very private person. So for me to write about my story, right?
Yeah,
But the truth is if you want somebody to walk something or to open up themselves to themselves,
yeah.
you have to sort of be vulnerable to that. That's sort of the give and take. If I'm asking somebody to read the book, then I have to give something in return. So this is why I share my story as openly as I know how, in the hopes that it'll inspire somebody to start walking their own walk. But it's not for me to tell you what to do. It's just for me to show you the way and for you to find your own way. That's my hope with my guidance because I've walked it, right? Because you know, I only talk what I've walked. I don't know how to talk anything else. But ultimately, it belongs to the person. And so I wrote the book to hopefully meet the reader wherever they're at. So when you tell me I feel like you're talking to me, that was my intention. I
Yeah.
really you kind of feel like, oh, okay, like she's right here, but I have the freedom to maneuver and navigate this. I'm just given the tools and just given the insight, and it's for me to pick and choose what I want. And if it resonates, great, and if it doesn't,
Yeah.
great. The choice because you have the knowledge.
Another very interesting part of the book is every few chapters you pop in a anecdote from a client, and they all have issues that I think every one of us could relate to. I could relate to almost every problem everyone did, like somebody who wasn't a team player. They just wanted to work on their own, but they came to you and they wanted some guidance on how could they better work with their colleagues, that type of thing. So you probably had dozens and dozens to choose from, and you picked the best ones.
I did. I had so many to choose from, and really the way in which I chose was what's most relevant and most universal for people, or
Yeah.
most related to whatever chapter that I was talking about. So it's thematic because there are different ways to reinforce the same thing, and also it's a book where you want to break it up a little bit. So you talk about certain things and you let the reader sort of introspect, but then you bring in an example where they can see themselves in the example. It's kind of easier to move forward. Then there's an exercise at the end to sort of reinforce if you so choose to do it. You don't
Right.
have back at a later time, but it's all offered to you. So whatever serves that particular reader is hopefully part of that book.
And again, I'm reading because I'm reading some of my notes just to, get your background on some of this. And another part that I was interested in was as humans, we are afraid of pain, be it physical, psychological, emotional, or even spiritual and existential. We recoil because pain goes against our instinct of self-preservation, signaling potential danger, and danger may ultimately mean some form of death. That was very profound.
Yeah, and the truth is, as much as our world has evolved and as much as we've helped our world move forward with that technology, our brain hasn't evolved. The human on the inside is the same that it was a few thousand years ago. We're still wired to notice. You know, when we say like some people are negative or they're not negative, they just really notice what's out of place. And we're meant to notice what's out of place in case, there was some sort of like foliage that's moving because there's a prey animal behind it. in 99% of the time today in the world, at least in North America, that's never going to happen. So we notice everything else. So, social media today is a great example. If you get less likes than you did in your previous post, then that's dangerous. Public speaking is fantastic because why are so many people afraid of public speaking? No matter how often you speak, you get up, you're like, ooh, there's that moment of, because in olden times, if you said something that was not acceptable by the rest of the tribe or the community, you could be ostracized. And if you're ostracized, you're thrown out. And if you're thrown out, you no longer have protection, you may not have food, and you may actually, that's danger, and you may die, literally die. So for the
Yeah.
brain, it leads to the same thing. And that loop is very hard to break, especially if you're not aware of it, but even if you are, because we're just wired, it's automatic pilot. So if we understand the brain, I talk my brain off the ledge quite a few times because it's when you separate yourself from your brain and you're like, I'm really not my brain. So it's going to generate all sorts of thoughts and I need to relax it if it's overwhelmed by everything that's going on or by, too much stimulus and, stimuli in one day, whatever it is. You can talk your brain off the ledge. That's okay.
You also talk about blame and that it's much easier to blame life when bad things happen, like what happened to you.
Yes, so I never blamed life, but life really doesn't do anything. It's really this neutral canvas. And then it's a place that we were offered. It's like a stage upon which we interact because we need
Yes.
to interact with in some sort of neutral context. And then we bring to it ourselves and the others. And imagine each person brings themselves with their layers and they're interacting with another person with their layers. So there's interactions on multiple levels simultaneously. But the truth is, when we say, life gives me lemons and no make lemonade, and I'm like, well, hold on a second, life didn't give you anything. It's great. Go get the lemons and make lemonade if you want, but don't attribute anything to life because it doesn't attribute anything back. It's like a one-sided relationship. And if we understand that, we're able to take more ownership of our life. Responsibility, yes, but also ownership. And once you own something, that means you're in charge. And if you're in charge, it means you can affect change. But it also means you're responsible. And we don't like that so much. Sometimes it's easier to blame life. It's like, it's not
Right.
me, life. But then we disempower ourselves in the moment without realizing, then we also start feeling more and more disempowered.
Finally, you talk about a lot of the primary layers. You go into great detail. Trust, shame, guilt, work, love. Those are just some of them.
Yeah, but by the way, except guilt, there are a lot of people who ask me, I actually didn't put guilt into one, and a lot of people have asked me, well, where's guilt? So the reason why I didn't put guilt as a layer, but shame is a layer, but they're kind of like cousins, they're connected, is
Yeah.
because guilt is not existential. It's not an underlying layer. Guilt is sometimes a reaction to something. I feel guilty because I didn't meet my own expectations or I didn't meet somebody else's expectations. So underneath that, it's a symptom of a deeper layer. It could be a symptom of perfection. It could be a symptom of shame, right? It can be a symptom of worthiness. But that's why, and I have a sort of like a little section on guilt explaining why it's not there because I didn't want the reader to just kind of stop and say, oh, where's guilt? Because a lot of people feel guilt. But guilt is more of an emotional response to something, but it's not existential. And it's a choice. And when I say that to people, like, oh, what do you mean it's a choice? And when we start talking about it or working through it, they're like, oh, yeah, it's a way that I disempower myself because I'm either unhappy with myself or I feel like I let somebody else down. And so then we work through that, and then the guilt no longer has a reason to be.
Well explained. Well, I could talk to you all day, and I'm writing an article for the Suburban newspaper's FYI magazine. When the next edition comes out around Friday, December the 6th. And I always have a book review every month, and people will be able to read a much more elaborate piece on the book. That just go to thesuburban.com and go to the FYI section. Where can people get the book, Martine?
So right now it's available on Amazon. So they just look up No More Layers and both Amazon.com, Amazon.ca. Soon it'll also be available on Indigo, so Chapters and Barnes and Nobles. But for now, Amazon is the easiest place for them to get it.
Okay, and we will try to get a copy available at the Cote-Saint-Luc Public Library. Since you live in Cote-Saint-Luc, I will be working on that as well. I want to thank you for your time. I want to congratulate you on a great piece of work and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
All right, Martine Cohen, no relation, has been my guest.